Welcome to the kettlebell swing tutorial. The kettlebell swing is the first skill that I'm going to run you through because it's the foundation of a lot of other movements, and it's a fantastic way to start to learn how to tap into the power of our hips. So it's a hip hinge, not a squat. We'll run through that in more detail in a bit. But to start with, I'm going to demonstrate a kettlebell swing. So I'm going to start off in that hip hinge position, and that's a powerful drive up with the legs. I'm not lifting with my arms, okay? That then is the foundation also for a kettlebell clean. So we can clean the bell up into the rack position. That all comes from a single-handed swing. And then it's a redirect and a catch. Same thing goes with a kettlebell snatch. So I couldn't hoik this 28 kilo bell up by lifting it up there very easily. I couldn't lift it up very easily into this rack position to do squats, to press, etc. So that's where the kettlebell swing comes into play, because it gives us that power to launch up, and then we can redirect with our arm and get up into that rack position. So let's run through now a kettlebell swing tutorial. Typically, when we start off with kettlebells without any good coaching, we tend to sort of start doing this thing where we squat down and we lift it up overhead. Now, there is a valid exercise which does this. It's the American style swing. But I will not be teaching you the American style swing. I'm going to be going through what's called the hard style or Russian kettlebell swing. And it's all about driving and creating that power with our big hip muscles. So let's go through that one more time. It's not a squat. It's not a front raise, so you don't want to lift with your arms. And it's not done slowly. It's very difficult to learn the kettlebell swing properly for this reason, because we're trying to think about what we're doing. We're trying to analyze a movement and reproduce a movement. That takes time. But because it's a powerful movement, we can't do it slowly because it just doesn't work. So even if you throw that kettlebell back, if you try and move slowly, you're not going to have that projection forwards with your hips as your legs drive into the ground, and you're not going to create that inertia to lift your arms up. So then you're going to have to lift with your arms if you want to get the kettlebell up. That's the first three mistakes we see. It's not a squat, it's not a front raise, and it's not done slowly. So what is it then? So this is where we start to demonstrate what the kettlebell swing actually is rather than what it's not. So it is a powerful hip hinge. So without using a kettlebell here, what we want to think about our body doing is getting down to that hinge position and driving up powerfully. Think of driving your feet down into the ground rather than doing the old hip thrust, because that tends to be uncomfortable. It's not a powerful way to actually generate the power of the kettlebell swing. And it just tends to not feel good, doesn't look good, etc. So let's try and get out of that habit to start with. So thinking about hinge and almost like you're trying to jump straight up in the air, but without your feet leaving the ground. So hinge and drive up to straight. Get it nice and snappy. I like to get people to run through that before they even look at picking up a kettlebell. Another way that I like to explain a kettlebell swing is stepping through the motions of the kettlebell swing in 4 steps. So from the top, so imagine the kettlebell has just floated up, or you've just driven it up with your hips. You're going to wait for that kettlebell to come down to the last second, coming down, coming down, coming down, coming down there. At the last possible moment, you duck out of the way back into that hip hinge. Then from there, you're going to powerfully drive into the ground, bang, 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 and that's then when your arms float up. So your arms are essentially connected to your trunk from that bottom position there. Boom, this stops moving, and this keeps moving with inertia. Then we get back to that first step again. So then we repeat, floating down, there, boom. So it's nice to step through those processes or those steps, just to give people an example of what we're looking for. It's not going to necessarily look like that to start with. So let's step into how to actually do the kettlebell swing now. Step 1, the hinge. So learning a hip hinge. So a hip hinge from the top, you want to break at the hips, but you'd also want to break at the knees. So What you want to think about here is how can I reach my bum back for the wall behind me as far as I can. Another little cue is imagine you're mooning someone. So Aussie kids when they're growing up sometimes be a little bit cheeky, excuse the pun, pull their backs down, their pants down and get their bum out. All right, so that's the position we want to find. Another analogy here that helps some people is you're at a public toilet, someone's peed on the seat. So you want to hover above that seat, okay? To get into that position, you still want to keep your feet nice and evenly weighted. What a lot of people do here is they try and stay too upright and they feel like their weight's going backwards. So stay nice and centered over your feet and it's that pushing back movement. Now, if you video yourself or if you watch yourself, you shouldn't see your knees traveling forwards in a hip hinge. Okay, so it's not this position and it's not this position. Let everything be nice and relaxed. Don't worry, this is not bad for your back. Hinging there and coming back up. Take your time with it. If you're struggling with that knee part, go up to a bench or a couch and block your knees. This is using an external constraint to try to come up with the movement that we are looking for here. So block your knees and then think of squatting from here. And because your knees are blocked, you'll have to go and do a hip hinge. Notice what you're feeling. So if you're getting into a good hip hinge, you should feel those hammies nice and tight. So we can play with that a little bit. So coming up to a kettlebell, imagine we're going to practice deadlifting it. If you are too much into a squat position, you probably feel your quads or your knees. So come down that, practice that, come down into a nice squat, low squat position, then gradually take your bum up until you feel your hammies go, ooh, hammies are a little bit tight. If you go too far, you might start to feel it in your lower back. So find that sweet spot. That gives you a little bit of feedback that you're in a good hip hinge position. Step 2, we're gonna load that hip hinge. So once you feel comfortable hinging, we're then just gonna practice lifting it up. And I like to, once people do it once or twice, I like to get people to do it powerfully. So from there, drive up nice and powerfully because we want to tap into that power-based movement. It's not slow and controlled, it's powerful. So you're going to do that, you're going to push those feet down into the ground, up to that top position. Step 3, we're going to do a hike pass. So we are playing NFL here. This is our ball. We want to throw that ball back between our legs, back to the quarterback. The idea is you're staying low as you throw the kettlebell back between your legs. That allows you to load up your legs, your hips, and from there you can drive up. If you don't throw the kettlebell far enough back, you won't connect your arms with your torso, and then you'll be disjointed. So you'll throw it back a little way. No matter how powerfully I drive up to straight from there, I'm not going to push my own arms with my torso. So then you're going to have to lift with your arms. So this is an absolutely fundamental step to learning a kettlebell, is getting a good hike pass. You've got to throw that kettlebell far enough back. I think of trying to throw the bell through the wall behind me to the post office next door. So what we're going to do, come down into the hinge. Roughly speaking, you're going to be about a foot length behind the kettlebell. I like to turn my feet out slightly. Personal preference, play with it a little bit, see what's more comfortable. Feet straight ahead, feet turned out. Then I'm going to hinge down. I'm going to tilt the kettlebell handle towards me. And from there, I want to practice staying nice and low as I throw that kettlebell strongly back. Don't go all floppy wristed, because you'll end up bumming yourself with the kettlebell. That's not a very nice thing to do. So nice firm wrist, but a nice loose grip. It's a bit counterintuitive. So don't over grip the kettlebell. Nice and loose, throwing it back. Okay? And then from there, you can go straight into step 4, which is a dead stop swing. So it's a single swing that comes to a dead stop. So hinging down, hiking back, drive up to straight, catch the bell, put it down. Easy. Of course, it's not necessarily easy, but I don't like to overcomplicate things. Common mistakes we tend to see here is lifting up too much. So here, and then you've got no power. You're going to generate the power from being in a low hip hinge and driving into the ground. So stay nice and low over the kettlebell. Hike it back, drive up, catch it, and down. And work on that timing of the catch, because that's going to feed into step 5 when we start to string those swings together. Step 5, string those swings together. So tilt the bell towards you. From there, you can really pull that bell back between your legs, drive up, and you're away. And as you can probably see, each swing is looking a little bit different at the moment. My swings are feeling slightly rusty there, but that's okay. It's still going to be a really beneficial exercise. And that process of you doing slightly different techniques with all your swings is actually helpful for learning, because after a while, you'll start to go, ooh, that one felt good. And your body will naturally start to zoom in on that technique, and it will improve over time. So let's look at a couple of the common issues then with the swings, especially once we start to string them together. So what we tend to see a lot of, this is a little bit lighter, I'm cheating, but we tend to hiking the bell back, and then people start to hinge too early. So from the top, you want to delay, and hinge at the last minute. That will load up your hips and the bell won't come too low. If you hinge too early, the bell will come really low. You'll tend to see people pulled into a lot of flexion with their back. And then there is no way that you can get that kettlebell up without lifting it with your arms. So what you're going to do is think of playing chicken with the kettlebell. So from the top, here, you're waiting till that last possible moment to hinge out of the way. One cue that can help is you've got buttons on your biceps, buttons on your ribs. So you're not allowed to hinge, or you don't hinge, until those buttons press each other. Bing! And then you hinge. Notice how high that kettlebell comes. So it's called the magic triangle. That's what I call it. Your groin and your knees form a triangle, and you want your hands to come back through the magic triangle there. If they start coming down there, we get into this funky position here. So from the top, that's where we tend to find that we load up the hips nicely, and then we can start to generate those consecutive, powerful swings. Another little tip that can be helpful for people, and just a caveat here, the right cue, the right drill will work for the right person. Not all of these drills will work for everyone. So don't worry, if you try something like this and it doesn't help you, that's okay. There'll be something else that will help you, and you can always reach out to me if you're having difficulty. But what you're going to do is use a towel. This is obviously not a towel, but it's a close relative of a towel, and pop it through the handles. Grip it nice and closely to the handle, so you're not grabbing it way up above the handle, and you're going to do some towel swings. So hike that bell back and drive up to straight, and keep everything as relaxed as possible here. So no lifting the bell, because it'll tend to do some funky stuff, but it's a nice way just to start to get to feel the rhythm, the timing of the kettlebell swing, and keeping your arms nice and relaxed. Tips here, try not to over grip the kettlebell when you're swinging. Think of just hooking those fingers in through the kettlebell handle, and that prevents you from lifting the kettlebell. If you death grip that handle, you're going to try and lift it up, okay? You want to try and keep as relaxed as possible. This is all about moving quickly. Your body can't really move quickly if it's really tense. It's a balance between tension and relaxation. So you want to be able to move fast. So you don't want your body to be super tense. Sometimes people over cue tension in the core, tension here, preventing pain, preventing injury. That stuff is very unhelpful, both for learning a new movement, and it's probably not going to prevent any injuries anyway. There's no good evidence behind a lot of those cues. So I like to try and keep things pretty simple here. If you're having a specific issue, sometimes you do need a specific thing to help you with that issue. However, most of the time, we don't need a lot of those cues. Our body is incredibly complex and good at coming up with movements. It's a self-organizing system. When we're playing sport, we don't think, oh, put your leg here, do this, pull your arm back, contract this muscle to throw a ball. Look at the target, throw the ball. So let's try and keep this nice and simple. Hook those hands into the bell handle, nice and relaxed. Then we are going to hike back, wait and hinge. Wait and hinge. Hope that helps. I hope that helps with your kettlebell swings. Just to set some realistic expectations from the outset here, kettlebell swings typically take months to learn. It definitely took me a long time. I was very frustrated learning these. And sometimes I look back at my videos and go, they look terrible. Does that really matter? No, only to me. It's not going to make you injured if your technique's not perfect. You're still going to get all the benefits, and there's research to show that. My colleague Neil May has got some great research out there showing that even when people's technique was far from optimal, they were still getting all of the benefits from the training. So it can take time, it's often frustrating, but if you keep with it and keep wanting to improve, you'll get better, the swing will feel better. It's going to start to look better aesthetically. I do think there is an element of wanting, as humans, things to look good. You watch some people play sport and you're just like, wow, that just looks nice. So I think it's a really good thing to want to improve your technique, but don't worry, whilst it's not looking perfect, it's still going to be super beneficial.